It's finally here, the long-awaited talk show on personality and socio-political issues. Bottom Line. Yes, Bottom Line. Coming up in this maiden edition, accountability advocate accounts for the highs and lows of the Sierra Leone Court Monitoring Group, now Center for Accountability and Rule of Law, CARL. Bottom Line. Make a date on Tuesday at 7 p.m. for 60 minutes as pure and applied political scientist, certified media and legal practitioner, and leading civil society activist Ibrahim Tomi shares his perspective on recent socio-political issues in Sierra Leone with host Joseph Egbenda Kapua, all on SLBC, the official voice of the people of Sierra Leone. Bottom Line. Don't forget, you can also watch this program on Facebook, SLBC TV channel 31, or YouTube, SLBC TV live stream. Bottom Line. This Tuesday.
Hello and welcome to the program Bottom Line. This is a public enlightenment campaign talk show designed to offer you an amazing cocktail of in-depth views, comments and analysis by well-grounded experts on socio-political events in Sierra Leone. Our guest tonight is a household name, and the name is Ibrahim Tomi, a civil society activist, legal and media practitioner, and the executive director of what is now the Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, or CARL. Welcome to Bottom Line.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here, to be appearing on your maiden program. Thanks so much for putting this together.
You can also join us live on Facebook at SLBC TV channel 31, and you can send your text messages by SMS to 030-022-639. I go over that. 030-022-639. This is Bottom Line. My name is Joseph Egbenda Kapua.
Now Center for Accountability and Rule of Law, CARL. Bottom Line. Make a date on Tuesday at 7 p.m. for 60 minutes as pure and applied political scientist, certified media and legal practitioner, and leading civil society activist Ibrahim Tomi shares his perspective on recent socio-political issues in Sierra Leone with host Joseph Egbenda Kapua, all on SLBC, the official voice of the people of Sierra Leone. Bottom Line. Don't forget, you can also watch this program on Facebook, SLBC TV channel 31, or YouTube, SLBC TV live stream. Bottom Line. This Tuesday and every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Don't miss it.
Let's get started, Mr. Tomi. Now, the Sierra Leone Court Monitoring Group became the Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law. What went wrong with the concept of the Sierra Leone Court Monitoring Group?
Oh, nothing went wrong. In fact, it was because of the success of that concept that we graduated into what is now called the Center for Accountability and Rule of Law. Remember, when we started in 2004, we were called the Special Court Monitoring Group. It was set up as an organization specifically to monitor proceedings before the Special Court for Sierra Leone. Based on the success of the organization, we thought that we had acquired enough experience to now move on to the national stage. That was when we changed the name from the Special Court Monitoring Group to the Sierra Leone Court Monitoring Program. And that was when we started monitoring proceedings before our local courts, including, local courts, magistrate courts, and the high courts. And then later, because our program expanded, the personnel increased, obviously funds increased, we had a lot more programs that we were working on. That was when management and board decided to change the name to reflect our broad programming objectives, which is why we are now called the Center for Accountability and Rule of Law.
Maybe you want to say this again, because what was the expected outcome of that name, that organization, Sierra Leone Court Monitoring Group? It appears specific to court monitoring. So if at all, what was the expected outcome?
Fantastic. The idea was that before the war, the TRC report is clear that one of the causes of the 11-year civil war was lack of access to justice, and the courts were singled out for blame. What we wanted to do through the Sierra Leone Court Monitoring Program was to field monitors. They were not necessarily lawyers, but we could give them some training, teach them the basic principles, fair trial hearings, some elementary, principles of law, and feed them in various courtrooms in Freetown and across the country. Their job was to basically monitor proceedings to see whether the proceedings were consistent with fair trial hearings, with the law, both substantive and procedural law. So at the end of every quarter, we'll put together what was called the monitor, a newsletter, basically reflecting our observations in court. It was actually an accountability program aimed at, in some ways, showing the leadership of the judiciary and certainly the people of Sierra Leone some of our observations. Now, through that work, over the last 15 years, we have been able to help bring about a number of changes in the court. So the objective, the overriding objective of that program was to, in some ways, hold the court to account and at the same time get members of the public informed about what was happening in our courtrooms in Freetown and in some parts
and put it on to that aim or that vision to do that. Did that exercise positively influence your work, in terms of monitoring the court and the judicial work?
Absolutely. And remember that when this program or project was conceived in 2004, I was working for the Special Court for Sierra Leone. You know how, by some dint of fate, I later left the court, went to the United States Embassy, and then came back to run the program. At the time, it was now called Center for Accountability and Rule of Law. Yes, the idea was, when we started with the Special Court for Sierra Leone, we had learned through that experience that there was need to ensure that our local courts also received the sort of, if you like, oversight, the sort of interest that we had generated among Sierra Leoneans about the proceedings before the Special Court for Sierra Leone. So once we fielded monitors, they came back with their reports, we did a newsletter, there was extensive outreach, both media and community outreach, on our observations. That was helpful, both in terms of getting the leadership of the judiciary to understand some of the anomalies, and again, members of the public to understand basic things like pathways to accessing justice, and fundamentally some of the challenges that confronted the justice system. Over time, the observations that we have chronicled, as I have said, have gone not only into bringing about changes in terms of structures and even laws in the judiciary, but also in terms of empowering citizens, the everyday citizen who comes in conflict with the law.
And our CAL is now a little elastic to embrace accountability, to the people of Sierra Leone, accountability, and even compliance with rule of law. What's CAL's assessment insofar as adherence to the rule of law in Sierra Leone is concerned by both the government and the governed, since you took over as executive director, in terms of adherence, in terms of compliance with the rule of law, because that is crucial and key to your vision?
Absolutely. I mean, we have come a long way as a country. Keep in mind that some 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago, there was limited discussion about respect or adherence to the principles of rule of law. Today, yes, there may be breaches, there are certainly challenges that we need to overcome, but one thing is clear. When an act or variation from the rule of law or principles of rule of law occurs, you will have organizations, you will have the everyday citizen raising it as an issue. The fact that we can now easily, again, thanks to social media and thanks to perhaps more lawyers now contributing to such debates publicly, we can now recognize that there has been a violation or the rule of law has not been respected. So yes, the truth is that there are still challenges here and there. In terms of fair trial rights, we can look at the way bail applications, for example, are adjudicated. You look at the correctional centers, the number of inmates, and all of that. There are many, many issues that we need to address. But I can tell you that from my position, having been involved with this work for the last 7 years, actually 8 years, now with the Center for Accountability and Rule of Law, and even before that with the Special Court, and in some ways while working at the American Embassy, I can tell you that significant progress has been made. And part of that progress is perhaps the reason why some may even disagree that little progress has been made. Back then, people had little or no interest, or even if they did, the level of knowledge was limited. The fact that we have done a great deal of job in terms of educating people, bringing about, raising awareness. Now people are taking interest and people are following. So when an act of violation occurs, you see people are usually up in arms. Now that's progress right there. And that's how we will begin to change the society. That's how we bring about real reforms. We've been able to contribute to significant reforms, not only in terms of the laws, but even in terms of the way the institutions work. And we can spend the entire night here talking about the institutions that now exist because of the work that we've been doing in terms of adherence to rule of law principles that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago.
Now you spoke of some challenges.
Yes.
Insofar as your assessment as an institution is concerned, where does that challenge, or where does that challenge, in other words, where does it lie insofar as your work on the one hand is concerned? Because some people even say the law is obsolete. Some people even say it's about enforcement. Where do you stand?
It's a combination of both, or perhaps even more. So yes, in some ways, we've been doing legal reforms in the last 10 years. Yes, the laws have changed, but we still have a lot of laws really that need to change or be changed. Yes, the institutions are still weak in many ways in spite of the huge investments both by the national and international actors. So yes, there's a problem, but also with the personnel. So you may have good laws, you may even have the required funds being allocated, but if the people who are charged with the responsibility of implementing these laws are not professional enough,
competence and
performance, professionalism, there's also ethical issues as well. So the challenges are huge, but I can tell you that you only need a government and the leadership of these various justice sector institutions, and I'm talking about the judiciary, the police, the correctional services, who understand that the justice needs of Sierra Leoneans can only be addressed primarily by the government of Sierra Leone. When you start relying on
how,
fine, it starts with investment, real financial investment.
And I continue with how.
I can look at the judiciary and say, at the risk of trying to usurp the functions of the Chief Justice, but I can easily look at the judiciary and say, if you were to allocate, say, $5 million to me to fix the way the judiciary works in some ways, in terms of records management, retrieval of records, in terms of filing, there are a lot of things that can be done with huge investment. So there's a financial aspect of it that needs to be addressed without delay. Look at the space. The other day I basically bumped into the Chief Justice and some officials of the Anti-Corruption Commission looking for a room to host a special anti-corruption corps. So you go to some room where documents are kept. It's as small as this. So there are infrastructural, financial, and really, personnel challenges. We have done some work in terms of, addressing the conditions of service of, the judicial officers. I am talking about the judges and law officers, the folks at the law officers department. But the support staff, the clerks, all of those guys, their salaries are still pretty low. So when you deal with the personnel issue, you deal with the infrastructural issues, and then you deal with professionalism, which is why we still continue to do monitoring, because even if all of those tools are provided, you still need a professional, competent, personnel to deliver on the mandate of judiciary and even the police and the correctional services.
Now again, when you still look at the justice system and the people of Sierra Leone generally, what appears characteristic of almost every Sierra Leonean nowadays is that almost every Sierra Leonean now ventures into interpretation of the law. You hear now even on WhatsApp, Facebook, and where have you, almost every Sierra Leonean interpreting the law, interpreting the constitutions, sometimes even loudly disagree with certain decisions of the court, the judiciary, if you like. From your assessment as an institution, do you think the people of Sierra Leone repose confidence in our justice system?
No, I mean, they are still, I mean, when the new Chief Justice was appointed, I think one thing that I said publicly, and I think I've shared that with him privately, is that he's got to do a lot in terms of, rebuilding public confidence in the judiciary. There are still serious gaps, which is not to say that there are not very good men, honest, diligent men and women of integrity who work in the judiciary and in the other justice sector institutions. But there's a lot, starting with the police and the courts, and certainly the correctional services. There's a lot that needs to be done.
When you say the police,
yes.
What's challenge?
I mean, there are so many challenges in terms of, we have covered police brutality, for example, abuses committed by the police. There's, of course, bribery that the police, as an institution needs to fix. We did a report a few years ago that showed that the government of Sierra Leone is losing at least 80 billion yuans just in Freetown, Western area, to bribery. How is that done? So almost every offense, traffic offense, seems to be an arrestable offense. So you have some smooth tires. Don't get me wrong, it is bad. But if the police can pull you over and then negotiate with you, if you are a private car owner, you pay 15,000, 20,000. Just imagine if that had been paid to government funds as a fine. So you have to develop a mechanism to collect that. So just for Freetown, we realized that 80 billion yuans was lost just in bribery. So there's that with the police, and they also need the recruitment standards have got to be reviewed to be sure that we have good men and women. Don't get me wrong, there are many good men and women, professional people in the police. I work with them every day, and I've come across very good police officers. But over the years, I think the recruitment standards have been somewhat lax, and true that we've recruited some people who, to be honest, shouldn't be serving in the police.
Does confidence in the judiciary on the line with the police?
Of course, when you're looking at the criminal justice system, we say it all starts in the community and then to the police before maybe it winds up in the judiciary. So if the police doesn't work well, what you find out is, first, people will be kept in their holding cells, and then they wind up in courts. And thankfully, we now have the bail regulations, and we'll talk about that if you have time on this program. But where you have magistrates and certainly judges with such huge discretionary powers, you find out that the correctional centers will be overcrowded. So if the police are really good at what they do in terms of arresting and detaining and even charging matters to court, what you will see is matters that should otherwise be resolved, perhaps in the home, wind up in the courts, and that basically clogs up the system. So yes, in terms of the challenges that the judiciary faces, in terms of the confidence gap that the judiciary faces, part of it can be attributed to the way the police functions or doesn't function at all.
And we're taking the matter to court itself. You've moved away from the police station. The matter is charged to court. The people expect fairness. The people expect justice. What is it that they should look out for? What is it that when they go to court, they should have confidence in? That indeed, when it comes to fairness, when it comes to justice, the court is there.
Brilliant question. What does justice mean for the everyday person? I can tell you, most people want, at the very least, first, if they've been arrested and detained by the police, that they have access to bail. And in most cases, it should be bail as of right. They don't have to pay for it. They don't have to bribe together. First thing. Second thing, they want expeditious trials. And finally, they want to be sure that the verdict, if it's a criminal matter, is consistent with the evidence adduced before the court. It doesn't have to go their way, so to speak. All they need is that the proceedings have been expeditious, they've had right to bail, and that what they see emanating from the bench truly reflects what was presented before the court. And if you can do that in an expeditious manner, it helps. So, to be honest, fixing the confidence gap that the judiciary in particular faces is not the most difficult thing to do. You only need the leadership with the support of the central government, and by that I mean investing in the judiciary and making sure that members of the bench receive training. You know, it's so critical. In-service training, it's called, these refresher training programs. It's so critical that resources are put into that. Otherwise, you have members of the bench who spend 2-3 years without any form of refresher training. That's not helpful.
So talk to me about your observations. When you go to court, you hear of delay, you hear of long adjournments and the like, and sometimes litigants are a little frustrated by all of these. How do we fix this as a people and as a country?
You know, we have been trying to amend the Criminal Procedure Act of 1965. So I'll start with that and I'll go to civil proceedings in a second. So what I would like to see in terms of the amendment is to, in some ways, introduce some of the standards at international level, whereby, you know, before a trial starts, you get into some pre-trial conference. You say, I'm going to be leading X number of witnesses. All of that, make full disclosure. You agree on timelines. So once you start, you don't see a prosecutor coming to say, oh my lord, my next prosecution witness is out of the juice. I mean, so sometimes what gets lost in the discussion is that it is not necessarily the court, as in the magistrates or judges, that are responsible for the delays. It's got to do with the prosecutors, the witnesses, the litigants themselves. So we have to put in place systems, and I know that there is some old law, even in the, of course, in the CPA, if you are the prosecutor and on three occasions or hearings or sessions, you don't, you know, lead a witness, your matter can be struck out. So enforcement is critical, discipline is critical. But sometimes judges are not robots, right? They are human beings. Sometimes they look at the nature of the offenses or offense and they say to themselves, it will be really hard on the victim to dismiss such a matter. So we've got to strike a balance between you know, the rights of the accused as well as the interest of the victim to get justice. So that's that. In civil proceedings, the commercial fast track court, the fast track commercial court, has done a brilliant job of really automating a system. So if you check, cases are relatively faster in the fast track commercial courts than in the general division of the high courts. And again, the courts, the judges have some share, some of the blame, share of the responsibility, but again, it is lawyers and even the litigants. So, which is why we have to perhaps look at the rules again, the high court rules for civil proceedings, to see whether we can introduce some guidelines with a view to ensuring expeditious proceedings. Because I have an old man, I'm not going to mention his name, believe it or not, that old man has told me that his mother has been on appeal for more than 24 years.
Wow. And
his file might have fallen through the cracks. So yes, there are structural issues, you know, how all of these things are handled.
How does integrity factor into all of these?
I mean, bigly in my Trump voice. Yes, integrity is a critical part of it, and we can talk about that all day long. Files getting missing, the magistrate grants bail, but the whole process of actually securing that bail becomes a challenge for the accused person. Some file is reserved for ruling and it takes 5 years, and I have been involved with, you know, cases of that nature where I have had to write letters to the Chief Justice or sometimes even to the President, you know, urging him to remind the Chief Justice, I mean, as a fountain of justice, that there is a poor guy or poor lady who deserves justice. So we've had to intervene in cases like that a lot, and sometimes you feel like, are you running the office of the ombudsman? So these are real challenges. I mean, justice is real. Justice is not just an abstract thing. It's got to do with the life of someone, with, I mean, you know, the welfare, the person's interest, what he or she has worked for his entire life. Which is why, unfortunately, Sierra Leoneans seem to be fixated more on the physical, you know, until our government, primarily, and citizens, but more importantly, or equally importantly, those who are charged with the responsibility of delivering justice understand that justice is real. It's not an abstract concept. If somebody truly feels that I have been wronged or my right has been violated, and he or she doesn't get it in good time, he's going to be aggrieved. The TRC report doesn't lie. The facts are there. It tells you that when people over time come to the conclusion that I'm not going to get justice from the justice mechanisms that exist, they submerge and they're looking for opportunity to vent. What happened there, and I say that with a deep sense of regret, in January 1999 should tell you that, I mean, people use that as an opportunity to settle scores, and that's not why these institutions are set up.
So, Mr. Tommy, some practitioners have also had this issue, you know, of the judiciary finding it difficult, you know, to even list matters for trial, as the case may be. Their applications also filed, and all of a sudden, no idea as to when actually these matters should come up on the line. And they've expressed, I remember last year also, some practitioners even threatened to, use some other measures also against the administration and the like. What is it that we can do such that the people out there who go to the big house are able to repose confidence in both their practitioners and the bench?
So, you know, moments ago, I sort of blamed, I said some of the blame should be shared by practitioners. But yes, practitioners also face real challenging moments. They have their own frustrations about the way the system functions or doesn't function at all. It's a problem. And we have been advocating over the last 5 years for some effective case management system. I do not think that we should continue to maintain a system where you have the Chief Justice assigning every file. And I say this not to be critical of any Chief Justice, but to say that there are better ways of doing that, because for example, in England, that's not the way it works. You have to develop a system like a conveyor belt, whereby because you have to be checking on the docket. There was a time we did a research where one judge, believe it or not, had over 135 files, a High Court judge, whereas another High Court judge here in Freetown had fewer than 15 files in his docket. Now, how did that come about? It's because you rely on one man to assign files. Right there, it is susceptible to abuse because he decides who gets to sit on a particular file. So there are ways of dealing with that. We can also introduce technology, which is why I'm championing at the bit at the idea or the prospect of seeing an app that ensures that you can file, electronically. You can adjourn electronically. I mean, the way some of these things are done, I think it's just because we are resisting to embrace technology and we are resisting innovation, and we have just not tried to be innovative. In countries like Ghana, and we've paid a number of study visits or tours to Ghana, you see that they are making progress, which is why, again, at the risk of repeating myself, to get started, the government has to understand that funding is critical. I tell you, everything in this country is a priority. I have to admit that. But there is no point ignoring the justice needs of Sierra Leoneans, only to realize that 20, 30 years later, they are coming back to, may Lord forbid, destroy everything that you've
and if you were to engage the current leadership of the judiciary here in Sierra Leone, insofar as innovations, insofar as what should be done, insofar as the confidence of the public is an issue, what will you tell you?
Oh, first, let's put our records on cloud. First, records management and retrieval is critical. If you're filing, let's develop a system whereby we can file electronically and make payments electronically. You see, I mean, as a people barrister, I tell you, I've had my own frustrations trying to pay at the Judicial Sub-Treasury. You can even introduce payments by Airtel Money. You get the receipts online, you scan it. file it online. I can tell you can create a portal for civil cases, general division, civil division. You create a portal for the fast track. There are various ways of making sure that we expedite court proceedings. And really, there's what is called judicial economy. Sometimes the way matters proceed in court, it takes way longer than it should. We only need to look at our rules, look at our processes, and really think about the overall objective and mandate of the judiciary. And of course, I know we've stressed a lot on the judiciary because it's deliberate. I'm sure in the course of the program we'll talk about the police and the other.
Yes, the program is Bottom Line and it's coming to you on SLBC here in Freetown. You can also join us on Facebook at SLBC channel 31 here in Freetown. We have our text messages coming in, and the first one says, "Great job, SLBC." This is from Joseph Toby. "The police is the most corrupt institution in Sierra Leone. Another way, I think, to stop that corrupt practice of them, they should be paid higher salaries and then regulate and train them properly." This is from Mohammed Mara. Continue to send your text messages to 030-022-639. 030-022-639. The program is Bottom Line. With me in the studios is Ibrahim Tomi, Executive Director of the Center for Accountability and Rule of Law.
It's finally here, the long-awaited talk show on personality and socio-political issues. Bottom Line. Yes, Bottom Line. Coming up in this maiden edition, accountability advocate accounts for the highs and lows of the Sierra Leone Court Monitoring Group, now Center for Accountability and Rule of Law, CARL. Bottom Line. Make a date on Tuesday at 7 p.m. for 60 minutes as pure and applied political scientist, certified media and legal practitioner, and leading civil society activist Ibrahim Tomi shares his perspective on recent socio-political issues in Sierra Leone with host Joseph Egbenda Kapua, all on SLBC, the official voice of the people of Sierra Leone. Bottom Line. Don't forget, you can also watch this program on Facebook, SLBC TV channel 31, or YouTube, SLBC TV live stream. Bottom Line, this Tuesday and every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Don't miss it. It's finally here, the long-awaited talk show on personality and socio-political issues. Bottom Line. Yes, Bottom Line. Coming up.
In case you are just joining us, you are watching Bottom Line, and I'm talking to Executive Director, Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, Ibrahim Tomi. You can also join this program through our Facebook live page, SLBC TV channel 31, or send your text messages to 033-022-639, 033-022-639. Now, Mr. Tomi, let's take a drive to our representatives. We have about 4, if not 4, political parties in Parliament. Motions and bills are expected to be debated on the basis of their relevance, for the good of the people. However, it would appear, that it is more along party lines, and this is really deliberate, that you seldom see MPs actually coming out to vote for a debate, to vote or even against motions put forward by their own representatives. I'm talking about national interests, if you like. More often than not, you see MPs of particular political parties largely in support of voting in support of motions proposed by their representatives or by their members who share the same political party. And we're a little concerned. Sometimes they appear to even lose their cool, and this is not Sierra Leone specific. In England and other areas, again, you still find the same thing. What do we do to change the narrative?
Part of it in our context has to do with the constitution. Everyone who has taken interest in this knows about the famous or infamous 77 1K party discipline. So when you break ranks with your party in parliament, you are obviously going to incur the displeasure of the leadership of the party, of your colleagues in parliament, of your support base. It's a no-no. It's politically suicidal to vote against a motion tabled by your party. Now, and I honestly don't think that's going to change just yet. But the question is, how do we make sure that especially the ruling party, because usually, for better or for worse, always have their way, they have their say, and they have their way in parliament. How do we make sure that bills, motions introduced in parliament generally reflect the interests of the people of your country? Which is why, first, before, this is my proposal, really before a bill is drafted, consultations need to be had, broad-based consultations, not only with persons in government, but the wider civil society. But there's also the pre-legislative conference where you can invite, do massive publicity, get people, experts, people who experience on the subject matter to participate. So that once it gets to parliament proper, you come there with a great deal of confidence and sense of satisfaction that it has received the approval of a broad section of your population. But the way, and I think this is the problem, sometimes these bills are drafted and sometimes accompanied by what is called certificate of emergency. Before you blink, it's passed. No debate, no prior discussion, no consultations. That's the challenge. It cannot be right, can it, that every bill or motion introduced by a member of parliament, be it a member of the opposition or ruling party, is only in the interest of the political party. Some of them are really in the interest of the public. The only thing is that where there has been an absence or clear lack of consultation, no consensus, it leads to suspicion. And let's be clear, you are making laws for the people. You are taking decisions for the people, on behalf of the people. You've got to be consultative. So yes, at the moment, the way it is done, unfortunately, it doesn't encourage mavericks, or you can't have an independent mind if you are there on the ticket of a political party. You've got to toe the line of your political party. It doesn't quite, in most cases, well, actually, let me rephrase, in some cases, it doesn't quite bode well for the people of the country. So we've got to first maybe change the constitution. That constitutional provision needs to be changed. And secondly, we've got to ensure that somehow in our laws, perhaps in the constitution, we make it mandatory for these broad-based consultations be heard with the people before these instruments are
I'm bothered about the role of the political parties. Now, you made a very important point there, that because the party almost always have the hold on the MPs, there's a likelihood that where you fall foul or where you attempt to go against the position of a party, you find problems. I was also thinking that whilst we consider amending that portion of the constitution where possible, what is it we can do? Because the spectacle in parliament, you just saw there, when they're in parliament, the opposing parties are almost in arms, all sort of words used, and this does not present Sierra Leone in any good light.
No, some of it is disgraceful. I mean, let's be honest, I'm not gonna mince my words on that. It doesn't have to be. I mean, the thing is, again, why are you in parliament? Why are you really in parliament? I mean, do you come to parliament with a sense of conviction to help your people? Is it for yourself? Is it for your... You don't have to fight if you're working on behalf of your people. So again, when you are called an honorable man or woman, there is a certain standard of behavior that society expects of you. So you've got to understand that the standard of accountability, the standard of expectation is high. Now, the truth is, and I've said this, and it's a shame that I have to repeat this on your program. Over the years, I've come to conclude that Sierra Leoneans seem to be more passionate about their political parties than about their country. The amount of energy, the passion, the demonstration of love that we show to our parties or for our parties. If we had just shown 50% of that for our country, this place will be nearly out of the woods. Okay, but the reason is that the country doesn't directly dole out resources, opportunities, or jobs to you. It is the party, especially the ruling party, that does that. So that is the reason. Unless you have a country where two things are happening. First, there's a vibrant private sector that really maybe accounts for 35-40% of the jobs. And you have a country where everyone feels compelled to adhere to recruitment standards. You are going to be having situations like that. The day we start hiring, may the Lord forbid, along religious lines, all the talk about religious tolerance is going to end.
Now, still with this parliament, there is an opposition majority in parliament that is 2/3 majority shy. How relevant, you are talking about, talking to at committee levels and the like, but I was also thinking again, how relevant is the concept of lobbying in the face of the seeming political grandstanding, in parliament?
It's so critical. Now, the pickup of our parliament requires lobbying, it requires negotiation. I mean, they really need good negotiators. You've got to reach across the aisle to make sure that you are striking deals, of course, in a cooperative way, in a way that also ensures accountability, putting the interest of people at the heart of all of these negotiations. I'm not saying, pay or bribe someone to support your position. Have the conversation. So, moments ago I talked about having a consensus on some of these issues before they are introduced in parliament. And that is where this is so critical. Because at the moment, the opposition doesn't win 2/3 majority, but has more seats than the ruling party. The ruling party doesn't even command, just by its own members, simple majority in parliament. We would need the independent candidates and, of course, the traditional rulers who traditionally vote with the ruling party. So, in order to avoid some of the really ugly scenes that we've seen, maybe it is important that weeks before some initiative is introduced in parliament, you have some good negotiators, and they don't even have to be parliamentarians. They just have to be skillful negotiators who are negotiating with the interest of the country at heart at all times. But also, if you have someone offering, you've got to have the other side willing to understand that this is done in the interest of the public.
In all of these, do you envy the role of the speaker in holding the balance? Because I have seen him allow almost every member of parliament to have their say on critical debates, in the world, lasting sometimes from morning till after 10 in the evening.
I've been critical of this parliament on some occasions, but you have to give it to him. The speaker has done a brilliant job of really managing it. If he were not that patient, really a good listener and a good arbiter, it would have been more chaotic. Give it to him. So, in some ways, I don't envy his job, but I'm just pleased. Honestly, I feel, really happy that we have a man like him managing affairs in parliament. He's done a
How does it
job.
feel like trying to avoid the criticism of bias by the court of public opinion?
Yes, it's a tough job because remember, unfortunately, he was appointed by the ruling party, or he comes from the ruling party. There's no doubt about that. So, no matter how he loves the opposition party, he's primarily loyal to his own party. But let's change the debate. For me, as long as he's loyal to the country, whatever he does, he's got the laws at heart, the country's interest at heart. Doesn't matter what. It does matter, of course, what the public says about him. But at the end of the day, it's a question of whether did he do right by the people of Sierra Leone, Did he do right by the laws? And I mean the constitution, the standing law, understanding orders. That is what should primarily preoccupy, his thoughts when presiding over parliamentary proceedings. But yes, it is a tough job. We have to admit that. But it could be less difficult than it has turned out to be with all the things that you guys are still screening. And I hope that going forward, the ruling party in particular should learn to negotiate, but also the opposition should be willing to listen and to strike deals in ways that obviously promote
I think one thing
our
that
country's
the
interests.
Speaker has been commended for is his ability to afford, like, almost every member of Parliament the opportunity to have their say. Most times, that has been, I think, the issue, because you have some people you want to describe as very controversial and the like, but his temperament in Parliament, it would appear, is so cool that almost every MP who intends having a say is given the opportunity.
And some credit should be given to the media as well. I think for the first time really in many years, there's a lot more focus and really coverage of parliamentary proceedings. That's something that is laudable. And the fact that we have a parliament where the ruling party is never going to have it easily. In Honorable Abbas Bundu, we've had a man who has shown really willingness to hear the other side, to have people say what they want to say, even though he doesn't always agree with you. But I think his maturity, his composure, it's really phenomenal. It's commendable.
Let's weigh in on accountability. Your institution, CAL, is keen on this. We've had allegations of misuse of public funds, like the Ebola issue. In fact, you are before, I understand, the ECOWAS court seeking justice for the victims. There are also these commissions of inquiries, never mind the hoo-ha around them. But how does the call to account factor into your role as an institution and vision for good governance?
It's critical. And so when we talk about accountability, we are not only focused on judicial accountability, we also now focus on accountability for economic and financial crimes. In fact, when the president took over, I was perhaps we are the only organization that put out a letter, wrote an open letter to him, urging him to ensure accountability and justice for past economic and financial crimes. So yes, I like to use this opportunity to say that I welcome the commissions of inquiry, and I'm extremely happy by what the Anti-Corruption Commission has done in the last few months. So we've seen some progress there. And so, why do we do this? Because remember, the special court was set up basically as an institution of accountability to, among other things, end the culture of impunity for crimes committed during the war. But we have said to ourselves, beyond the special court, let's get back to where we started, the war. What led to that? It was basically impunity for egregious crimes, financial crimes, corruption, marginalization of the poor, unemployment. Those were part of the reasons we went to war. Now, if we're able to manage our resources very well, account for our resources, invest in our people, we will not only develop this country, but will ensure that we avert what we went through in the Lebanese Civil War. So that is why we do this. It is critical for the survival of the state, and indeed for the collective prosperity of our people, that we are able to hold everyone accountable. Not only the boys who steal goods or the men who rape, unfortunately, but also the big men and women who manage our resources must be held to account by various institutions of accountability, which is why, as I've said, it's important that we have the commissions of inquiry. It's important that the work that the Anti-Corruption Commission is doing is critical, and the work that we continue to do as CSOs, NGOs, in really holding the government to account, making sure that we are raising every penny that is there to be raised, but more importantly, efficiently managing the resources so that we are basically improving a lot of the average Sierra Leonean.
All right, let's turn the microphone now to our viewers and listeners through their text messages. This one reads, There is what we call cross-party lobby. MPs with private member bill must lobby MPs from other parties to support their bill. Not all motions or bills are of party interest. We have seen in several cases MPs from different political parties supporting a bill. I like this program, Mr. Tomi, and I like listening to things around the rule of law. Against this background, I have not heard much on justice at the local levels, especially those dispensed by the local authorities where majority of Sierra Leoneans access justice. This is from Brahma Mansari. I see our parliamentarians wanting to follow the ways of other countries like South Africa and Nigeria. They seem to think the behavior of the MPs in these countries are worth emulating, which is sad and reflecting Sierra Leone in a bad way. Continue to send your text messages to the number 030-022-639, 030-022-639. My guest tonight is Ibrahim Tomi, Director of the Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, and the program is Bottom Line. Now, let's move on, Mr. Tomi, talking about being in favor of the commissions of inquiry, largely in view of the call to account for stewardship and like. Now, the main opposition party in Sierra Leone is insistent on staying away from the proceedings, citing procedural deficiencies and the like. I know there are legal avenues should that insistence hold. But in what sense does this defeat efforts to curb impunity?
It doesn't, because unfortunately, I mean, obviously, let's remember, when there are what to call fair hearing rights or guarantees, and there's a principle of natural justice that you have to give the other side an opportunity to be heard. Now, it is important for many reasons. First, these are, I suspect, serious allegations against persons of interest. It is only but right that you come forward and explain your own side. Because if you did not do so, apart from the fact that there may be adverse findings against you, there are also the possibility of reputational damage. So it is important that you come. But if somebody refuses to come, yes, they will still, the work will still go ahead. The state will present its case, its evidence against persons of interest. There will be conclusions, findings, and recommendations. Once the white paper is released, adopting those recommendations, especially if there are adverse findings or recommendations against the persons of interest, the state will go ahead and enforce. So my point is simple. Yes, there has been some controversy about rules made by the Rules of Court Committee versus rules that will be made by the Commissions of Inquiry. The point is simple. The Bar Association has gone to court. Until the Supreme Court hears and decides, the Commissions of Inquiry enjoy what we call a presumption of regularity. It is a law. But let's also say this, and I've said this in some private forums, but let me use this platform to say this. Now, the setting up of the Commission of Inquiry, or Commissions of Inquiry, is quite different from the function of the Rules of Court Committee to make rules. So the President, in exercise of his powers under Section 147, can appoint Commissions of Inquiry. And he's done so. The instruments have gone through Parliament. That act is legitimate in itself. The only question is... I'm
afraid we're running out of time, but I will slip this in. What is the bottom line in all of this for good governance?
The bottom line in all of this is that when you are in office, first, let's remember that there are people, the people need justice. You've got to manage the resources of the people, invest in your people, ensure that the challenges of yesterday are continuously addressed. Accountability has got to be the bottom line. Accountability is a way to address, or one of the ways we can address many of the challenges that confront us. If we're able to generate our resources, manage them in an accountable, transparent, and fair manner, will be sure that the many kids whose futures have been truncated because they dropped out of school, the many boys and girls who are now part of the cliques, the gangs, the many women who can't even afford basic housing, who can't afford a meal, who are toiling day in and day out, their issues will be addressed. So bottom line, put the interest of your people at the heart of governance and ensure that accountability and transparency are your watchword in governance.
Thank you very much, my friend. We have to stop it there. The program has been Bottom Line, coming to you from the SNBC here in Freetown, and also our regional stations joining us, and also those who have been following us on Facebook and other social media platforms. My guest has been Abraham Tomi. He's the Executive Director of Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law. We hope you have enjoyed this program. If you missed part or all of this edition, join us this Thursday at 1 p.m. There will be a repeat broadcast of the program. Otherwise, you join us next Tuesday at 7 for another edition of the program Bottom Line. It was produced by Tilly Kuhlman, and many thanks to the camera crew and technical assistance provided by Johnny King, Sinisi McAvoy, Claudius Beckley, Gerard Cole, and all of those who have been part of this program to make it a success. We are back next Tuesday with another edition of Bottom Line.
SLBC, the official voice of the people of Sierra Leone. Bottom Line. Don't forget, you can also watch this program on Facebook, SLBC TV.